Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into something I think is going to fundamentally shift how you view leadership, power, and organizations. We're unpacking a really fascinating framework called Governance and Grace, the Architecture of Trust. Our source material anchors on this incredibly profound thought from Mira, who's one of the two conceptual voices shaping this whole framework. She says, governance is not just structure, it's soul. Now, she actually framed this during a quiet evening on a terrace, lighting a small brass dia etched with the word for truth. Right away, you know we're stepping far away from boring bureaucracy here. By starting with this idea that governance has a soul, we're looking at something deeply human. To really grasp this shift, we kind of have to contrast the old school view with this new framework. On one side, we have compliance. Look, we all know compliance, right? It's those soul-crushing 500-page terms of service agreements. It's the massive binders of rules just meant to keep lawyers happy and regulators at bay. But on the other side, we have conscience. That's what our source is pushing for. Governance isn't just a defensive checklist. It's an active exercise in care. It's protecting human dignity. It's basically the difference between doing something just so you don't get sued and doing it because it's literally the right way to treat people. Sure, the textbook definition of corporate governance is all about the systems and processes that direct an organization. But Arav and Mira want us to toss that sterile definition out the window. Instead, they use this beautiful metaphor, governance as the architecture of trust. So it's less about the rigid rules in a corporate charter and way more about how power is actually held within those systems. Like, how are decisions made when no one is watching? And most importantly, how are people protected? This philosophy completely flips the traditional boardroom. Usually, boards of directors act as these distant, symbolic overseers. You know the type, flying in a few times a year, nodding at spreadsheets, totally hyper-focused on shareholder profits. But under the architecture of trust, they have to become empathetic co-creators. They become active, listening stewards, whose real primary job is safeguarding the interests of absolutely everyone touched by the organization. And hey, this isn't just nice-sounding theory. It actually works across totally different industries. Take a publishing house that dared to put actual authors and readers directly on their board. By doing that, empathy literally drove their decisions, not just profit margins. Or think about a cooperative dairy. Instead of dictating milk prices from a corporate tower, their board sought down monthly with farmer reps, explained the math, and co-created the solutions. It made governance a real, living conversation. Even a tech startup got in on this by creating shadow boards of junior employees. And that was true stewardship, elevating ground-level voices rather than just corporate tokenism. So that brings us to a vital realization about how we view stakeholders. Employees, customers, communities, regulators. Traditionally, governance models just manage them as parties. They're just data points on a risk assessment matrix. But the architecture of trust absolutely demands we treat them as true voices. They are active, breathing participants in the ecosystem of the organization, not just variables on a spreadsheet. When a textile firm actually consults local artisans before launching a line, the pricing and storytelling become deeply respectful. When a logistics company stops relying purely on routing algorithms and instead listens to driver feedback, well, driver fatigue drops and efficiency absolutely skyrockets. That is policy turning into genuine partnership. Or imagine a school where parents and students actually plan the curriculum. Governance stops being a top-down mandate and becomes a shared rhythm that enriches everyone. Okay, so how do we actually build this architecture of trust? Let's go step by step. Step 1 is ethics. That's your foundation. It means doing what's right even when it's incredibly hard or unprofitable in the short term. Step 2 is transparency. Think of this as the window. It's openly sharing decisions, budgets, and even your tough moral dilemmas. And step 3 is accountability, the anchor. This means taking full, unreserved ownership of outcomes and actually learning from mistakes, instead of passing the buck. Let's look at these pillars in the real world. For transparency, our source points to a nonprofit that simply posted open budgets and invited community audits. They proved transparency isn't some terrifying burden. It actually became a profound bond of trust. For accountability, a manufacturer had a safety incident. Instead of hiding behind PR spin, they owned it, compensated the workers, and completely redesigned their safety protocols. Accountability became a core moral imperative for them. And for ethics, there's this fantastic example of a startup that built an AI and privacy council before they even launched, building a conscience right into their culture long before a crisis ever hit. Now, this architecture doesn't just stop in the boardroom. It completely reframes corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and sustainability. So often, companies just use CSR as a PR stunt, right? A glossy marketing campaign to make the quarterly report look good. But under the architecture of trust, CSR is reframed as core character. It's not charity, it is continuity. It's a fundamental way of being that makes sure the organization gives back as much as it takes. Genuine sustainability means growth doesn't compromise the future. A local bakery proved this by not just writing a check to charity, but by locally sourcing, composting, and teaching youth classes. It was an expression of their character, not a campaign. A textile unit shifted entirely to natural dyes and slashed water usage. Sustainability was literally woven into their business model. And a school went all in with rooftop gardens and climate literacy. They didn't just teach it, they lived it out loud. CSR was simply their everyday way of being. As we near the end of our explainer, I want to take us back to that quiet terrace with Arav and Mira. As their conversation wound down, Arav had this realization. He said, "And grace is not just kindness, it's courage. True governance, the kind that truly listens, constantly includes, and actively sustains, requires immense, brave grace. It takes real courage to open your books to the community or invite critique from junior employees. It takes courage to govern with soul." So I want to turn the lens directly onto you. We've talked a ton about boards and startups, but this architecture of trust applies to all of us. Ask yourself, what do you govern in your life? Whether it's a team at work, your household, or even just your own time. How do you hold power in those spaces? What does true transparency mean to you when you make a mistake? And how do you genuinely honor the stakeholders who rely on you every single day? Ultimately, all of these frameworks, all of these choices between compliance and conscience, they all boil down to one incredibly vital question. Whether you run a massive corporation, lead a small team, or you're just navigating your own personal path, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? Think on that. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we continue breaking down the ideas shaping our world.